Next up, I've got Fergal. Fun story is like we met back in 2015 or 16 or something in Dublin. Organized this little like Dublin AI meetup, and I think there's probably like 35 people in the room. And you'd freshly joined Intercom, I think, after doing a startup. And so he's been at the forefront of building a SaaS company, probably one of the most popular bubbles on the internet, as I was joking the other day, and transforming that from the ground up with machine learning, and now particularly with large language models. So hope we'll learn a couple of best practices from him and his team. Over to you, Fergal. Thanks. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Nathan, and thanks everyone for coming to my talk. It's a real pleasure to be here and address such kind of a broad and deep kind of crowd. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my experience with a company called Intercom. Intercom is a company I joined about 6 years ago to kind of build the machine learning team within an existing kind of R&D kind of function in a SaaS company. So here's what I hope to do today. I hope to kind of introduce myself, tell you a little bit about Intercom in case you haven't heard of it, talk about our journey at Intercom productizing LLMs. The last 6 months have been totally taken over by, I guess, productizing OpenAI's models mostly. I want to talk a little bit about our ML development tactics, how we actually go from an idea to a product at Intercom, and just give some general thoughts on LLMs. And so this is a very broad topic, but I think it's a broad audience. Some people are more on the applied side, some people are more on the technical side. I'm going to try and keep kind of applied and high level, but happy to go deeper in the questions if that's of interest. So what is Intercom? This is the front page of Intercom's website. B2B SaaS, hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue, and a lot of kind of mostly sort of small and medium-sized companies use Intercom as a customer support, customer service solution. And you can kind of see from our website at the moment, it's talking about AI a lot. We really believe that AI is going to completely change customer service and customer support, and we want to be an early mover there and try and be a leader in that. Customer service is a big deal. It's a big industry. Statistics vary, but I have read stats that like 4% of the UK workforce work in contact centres, and that's not just doing customer service, but it's to give you an idea. There's a lot of people kind of on calls or on chats or email all day, every day, kind of answering customer service queries. So what is Intercom? Intercom makes this little bubble you may have seen in the bottom right-hand corner, perhaps, of a website. We're one of many companies that do this. These are all versions of the Intercom Messenger, we call it, and people can kind of like send a message there and talk to customer support. Then on the customer support side of it, we make sort of what we hope is a high productivity inbox, we call it, for people to actually answer these support questions. And we try and build this to be like modern software. It's got dark mode, it's multilingual, all those good things. It's got keyboard shortcuts. We spend a lot of time trying to make it highly productive for the people who are in there. And customer support we feel is going to completely change due to AI, because there's just so much structure in the domain. So much of what humans are doing all day, every day is answering questions and taking people through conversations and workflows and debugging processes that have quite a lot of structure in there. It's in textual data, so it's kind of easy to get data sets with. It's easy to kind of work with. And so I joined Intercom, as I said, about 6 years ago to start building an ML function. And the first big product we built was what we called Resolution Bot, which is sort of a last generation bot. And so there's an example of it running. And so someone comes along and says, I need help with my order. And we recognize that that's a question the bot has been curated to deal with and to answer. And so we give this pre-canned order or pre-canned response. And then the user can say, OK, that helped, or they can say, show me other answers, or they can say, wait for the team. And wait for the team is the kind of way of, that's the failure state, sort of. That's like dismissing the bot came in, but it didn't help. I still want to talk to a human. So on the back end, when someone sets this up, how do we do it? And so here's an example, a pretty simple example. You might want to set up the bot to kind of handle a question about password resets. And what we try and do is we try and make this as easy as possible for our users, some of whom will be quite unsophisticated, to get this bot live. And so, you can type reset password in there, and you see previous times a similar question has been asked. And we do a lot of pre-processing on the back end. And you can sort of see this actual thing here where you train AnswerBot, it used to be called, when you train that to recognize a given question, this is actually an active learning system here where like we're trying to like learn the boundaries of this cluster of like the questions that sort of define what we think is a particular topic, like resetting my password. And you can see resetting my colleague's password is quite syntactically similar, but is semantically different and is not an example that a reset password answer can help with. And is also a weird thing to ask, but fair enough. So yeah, and then you set up this is the previous generation. You set up the bot, and you hard code, kind of give say what the bot should say for this, and you can create that from your previous data. But anyway, people there's kind of a starting problem where people kind of come along and they can't even get started, and we try and do like an unsupervised clustering approach to try and like figure out, hey, these are your big common questions and so on. And this is a marketing asset, but it's built on an actual graph grouping of kind of similar conversations into clusters. We in fact productize something like this as well, with a custom unsupervised clustering algorithm. So here we go. So we've got a big business problem. We're trying to create tools to help customers set up these bots to answer their questions. And this is all about, the name of the game here is improve the resolution rate. Is basically have the bot answer more and more questions, and that really is meaningful, and then humans don't need to answer the same question again and again and again, which is rote and gets boring in the end. And this product didn't really work as well as we wanted it to. And it does a substantial dollar value in revenue, and it moves the needle for a lot of customers who do all the hard work of setting it up. But there's a lot of friction. That process I just showed you of curation has a lot of friction involved in it. And the accuracy was good and was good for simple questions, but wasn't great. You can probably see where this story is going with ChatGPT and so on. We'll come back to that. The other thing I wanted to say is we also, in the inbox, human support, we were trying to build, early generative stuff on our side to try and basically do really good type ahead or really good complete to save customer support agents time. And we were working on that, and November last year happened, and ChatGPT came along and changed things for us a lot. And this was an internal strategy document we wrote maybe 6 months or a year before, something like that, or whenever Google Lambda's paper came out, and it was doing like really good dialogue, and we were like, wow, this stuff is getting better. At some point, this is going to radically change customer service. We don't know when that is. And then when ChatGPT came out, we were like, okay, it's time to go. And so we started a project internally to try and say, okay, we want to build internal belief that these things are going to be as big as we think they are. We want to get some features live with our customers as quickly as we can, because suddenly all our customers started asking us, hey, can I get something like ChatGPT, but for customer support? And we shipped 3 features quite quickly. Summarization, where before a support rep hands things off. If you've ever been on a phone to a customer support rep and they say, hey, I'm going to get my colleague to kind of come and help you with this. I need to escalate this to my colleague. That they probably had to write a summary of the case, or give their colleague a summary on the phone before that handover could happen. And so, we built some simple features here quite quickly: summarization, ability to edit like tone of voice, and tried to build a feature to expand the contents of a messenger from a shorthand. So, this is kind of like the edit tone of voice, make things more friendly, make things less friendly, kind of an early prototype feature, see how it got on, and then expand where, the idea being a teammate here would write something, a support rep would write something in shorthand, and then expand would use GPT to kind of like turn that into a fully fledged response. And, it's mixed. Some people love this, some people are more lukewarm on it. And so we built all these things quite quickly. 5th of December, we were like, okay, we're going to build something here. We had prototypes ready by the 20th of December, got customers access to it on the 13th of January, and then the 31st of January, we did a launch with customer testimonials based on a couple of weeks of actually using these things and giving us feedback. And we got some really great feedback about summarization. But people in general were just delighted to see that, user expectations just changed so fast. People were like, as soon as they're using ChatGPT, they're like, I spend all day answering questions. Why can't I have this? People are not reasonable. They just want things now, or they want software now. And, fair enough. And these are examples of kind of like easy features. And with the kind of power we have with like GPT 3.5 and GPT-4 these days, from an applied lens, there's some things that are just easy to build. It's easy to build summarization, right? You're kind of taking a bunch of context and a bunch of conversations, and you're just like saying, hey GPT, like summarize it. And it does a really good job. And we've had that live and we've tested it, and it works great. It's an easy feature. You can build that and ship that in a week. And there's a few things you need to watch out for, like what happens when a conversation is really long. But that's now easy. And we tried to build summarization for teammates about a year beforehand, and we're using like T5 and like BERT and things like that, and we just couldn't get it to work. So I think like these days, easy things, out of the box accuracy is high, and especially for something like summarization, the cost of an error is low. This is a big change. The ability to like ship a feature like that to production from a couple of weeks' work, I would argue, and I guess one of my purposes of my talk here today, is a qualitatively big different change in ML. There are still hard features, right? Okay, if the cost of an error is high, it remains hard, or if out-of-the-box accuracy is low. And this sort of expand feature we talked about here, it works really well for some businesses, but it doesn't work for like other businesses where you need the right context to make it great. And we've sort of a generation 2 version of this we're working on at the moment, where it's like we use like vector search and things like that to pull in previous similar conversations based on the kind of the shorthand keywords that are there, and pull them in and send them to the LLM in its prompt. Since about February, we've been building a bot, Finn, and initially the first wave of features we built were all in the inbox, because there was always going to be human approval, and we just thought these large language models will hallucinate too much. We can't put a bot live that uses GPT to answer questions, because there'll be too much hallucinations. It'll give the wrong answer too much. But we've successfully managed to build a bot Finn, and we started out building this in GPT-4. We got some early access to GPT-4, maybe a month or two in advance of its launch, and we managed to use it, and it's just a much more instructable model. We're using this in a retrieval augmented generation way, and to our purposes, it effectively doesn't hallucinate when you use it in that way. When you give it a prompt, or you're like, hey, just using this information from a knowledge base, answer constrained to that information, it works very reliably in production. And so there's still a lot of discourse around hallucinations and large language models. I think if you use them in a right way, they don't hallucinate very much. Finn's design goals: converse naturally, answer questions about your business just with your information, reduce hallucinations to acceptable levels, and require minimal configuration. And this product, we're very excited about it. It's generally available from about 2 weeks ago. We're very excited about it because you can just throw all your contents of your knowledge base at this bot. All that curation stuff I said before, you don't have to do that to get the level of accuracy you wanted. And we're building on OpenAI's models here at the moment. We're a user, we're an application provider of this. But this really works, and we think this is going to change customer support. And you can just put more and more stuff into that knowledge base, retrieve it, use an LLM to kind of like turn it into answers that move the needle for your business. And this is kind of like what Finn looks like. We shipped that demo on the 15th of March, so we're trying to move fast here. Development tactics, this audience is going to recognize breadth first search versus depth first search. Always build your products breadth first. Always build them like with the minimal version of each bit. Ship that. Don't go deep. And I know, obviously, if you're in hard tech, I guess, but in B2B SaaS, always move breadth first. Intercom has got all these principles, start with the problem, ship fast, ship early, start small, and measure outcomes. And those kind of cut right across all the software Intercom builds. Intercom tries very hard to be a fast development organization. We've tried building an ML team and an ML development organization that uses these same principles. So we have a small, pretty senior machine learning team. We're always product focused. We always own the ability to ship. We always have engineers in the ML team. We never have gatekeeping from anyone else to stop us shipping something or A/B testing something. I think that's really important. Anything we do, we almost measure time to first customer use as like the primary success metric of anything we do. And I know that probably sounds a bit opinionated and a bit radical, but it's, you know, the first version of the first bot we just built it on Elasticsearch out of the box, but we got live with customers extremely fast. I almost think this is the biggest predictor of success of any ML product, even if it uses no machine learning at all, but it starts solving the problem, and you can put machine learning in there and A/B test your way to somewhere good. And you know, I guess the modern version of that with large language models is go to production with large models like GPT-4, which are extremely expensive and extremely capacity constrained, but you can get in markets so fast and then like make them cheap later. And we've actually discovered that how we build machine learning has changed due to our easy access to the large kind of GPT models, because it's like a place where clearly the obvious thing to do is a classifier, and clearly GPT-4 is massively overpowered. We just build it with GPT-4 and we ship it, and we replace it with a classifier later when we have like a live product. And you know, the simplest, smallest things that we know we can solve with traditional NLP techniques, we just write a prompt that describes what we want and we ship it, and then you know, we do that later if it turns out anybody ever wants the feature. Thoughts on large language models, and you know, this may be obvious to this audience, but you know, I really think there's three levels of kind of coming to terms with it. Level 1 is like, it's incredible, it's going to change the world. And level 2 is like, hey, it makes things up, it hallucinates, it's not trustworthy. But I'm arguing that level 3 is like, it is pretty incredible when you apply it right. And it's easy to estimate these things because they kind of have all these capacities that have been accidentally bundled depending on how they're trained. Again, I may annoy people who are actually building the models, and I apologize, but it's not useful to think about these as token predictors. My position here is, that's like describing a human by talking about genes and evolutions. It's not a useful model. And again, definitely come to the point where I distrust anyone who says it definitely can't do some task because it's just trained to predict the next word. Instead, from an applied perspective, I think it's much better to think about these as like, it's a database and it's a reasoning engine, okay? It's got a big database in there because it's training all the data on the internet, and like, that sucks. We don't want it to have a database at all. From an applied context, we are trying to get it to like never use the information that it knows based on its training. We want its reasoning ability. So we're always using this in a retrieval augmented generation way. We're always taking, you know, relevant data to the problem that we can constrain and that we can control. We're passing that into the prompt of the large language model, and then we're using it to solve the problem. And I think that in most industrial uses, we will look back and we will think like, oh, like ChatGPT got a huge amount of interest in the area, which is great, but it also misled everybody because we're all focused on what information is in the ChatGPT database and like what are its limits, and it's old and it's outdated and it's approximate. No, like what matters is it's a wonderful reasoning engine. And you know, here's an example of a toy example. A mouse wants to steal a piece of cheese. You know, there's a cat in the room, there's a bell in the room. What should the mouse do? And like, it makes a plan and it does reasoning. And if you say, you know, it avoid the bell, and you say, oh, the cat's deaf, it's smart enough to be like, ignore the bell. Reason the cat is deaf, the bell sound won't alert it. That's a toy example, right? And it's like a simple domain. But you know, machine learning couldn't do stuff like that for a really long time. And this works reliably. And this is meaningful for us because we have customer support use cases. We have a very large amount of diverse customers. We are not fine-tuning model weights on a customer per customer basis, just throwing in the contents of the knowledge base. And we're using the built-in general knowledge reasoning ability to answer customer support questions. And it works. It's really great. And it means we don't have to do all the curation and stuff we used to do before. The accuracy rates, as far as we can tell, are about as high as we used to get with all that like legwork and curation and stuff, which some customers did and got great results, but many didn't because it was just too much friction. Obviously, the context window you can use to put data to these models is limited. Thousands of words. It's getting bigger, maybe it's getting huge, but maybe if you put too much stuff in it, the generation gets worse, the answering gets worse. You know, basically, I think that today you can't put a whole knowledge base or context in it, so it synergizes really well with vector search, and this is a really emerging pattern. I guess the last thought, it may be obvious to this audience, but worth saying, like, it's a lot of the initial dialogue about large language models is like they're inert things. They'll just like predict text, just complete text. However, it can easily be turned into an agent, and Fin architecturally, like the outer part of Fin, the new bot we have that answers customer support questions, the thing that drives that bot, the outer part of that bot, is an LLM agent basically, and then the individual bits of the bot that answer questions is also a custom prompt. So it's just a big collection of prompts, and then with like an overall prompt that kind of like figures out which one to use. And